Saturday the 26th of February. It's probably 2:30 in the afternoon. And this is a view that any followers of the astronomy playlist here on Golden Phoenix Publish should recognize.
It was still dark outside. There was this light.
And that view, of course, came from the midst of Penti, our pentagonal, expandable, potentially portable astronomical observatory that has proven itself to be only slightly permeable to the weather, but not so much as to put valuable astronomical equipment at risk. What you see before you here now are four tote bags, each of which contains an essential component of a Losman D G11 mount. And I am now about to assemble them once again, but not as last time, outdoors on the back deck, but whenever you assemble anything from parts, you should hold in your imagination how that part's to be used in the future as the assembly comes together. Have a look at these things and see if they may inspire any recollection from a previous video. Accommodate. Have a look at this. No, it's not part of it. Wait a sec. But it must weigh at least 60 pounds. And then there is this component. In their totality, I don't think there's anything left in this bag. These three. For our next test, have a look at this. It should be the one and only mechanical assembly. It's as heavy as anything I've lifted yet. Inside this bag, which is unwieldy in the extreme when you're holding a video camera. Let's set this baby aside. Okay, this rather ornately decorated bag contains within itself something equally as massive and heavy, which is of course why I have all these parts separated to begin with, because they are not transportable in the unit. So now, I don't think there's anything else in this bag or in a pocket, but who knows, we'll see later on. We have what? We have the cradle, declination head, part of the axis. This is probably the declination head. This is the right ascension head. The cradle. We have the counterweight, and we have the eyepiece tray. And now three bags have been uncovered. And of course, if you've been following all this, or if you're not new to telescopy and amateur astronomy, you know what I'm about to reveal in this bag. All right, the tripod. Out of 4 carry bags, I have now pulled together 6 items: tripod, mount head, cradle mount head, cradle, counterweight, and eyepiece holder. They all fit in those bags, and at some point in the right assembly, they will also fit together inside the observatory. Now you may note that there's no electronics here. At this point I am simply going to put the telescope together for manual operation. So I've now positioned the tripod inside the observatory, and the next stage is to put the declination head on the mount here. That'll be the next step. Okay, tightening down these retainers. You can see the declination mount head is now in place on the tripod itself. Beneath the declination head is the eyepiece tray. Starting to look like a mount, isn't it? Okay, using these two knurled knobs, I have now trapped the right ascension axis in place. As you can see, now we can track east and west. Actually, this will be north and south, and this is east and west. So, in fact, I had it reversed. Even though this points in the direction of Polaris, it's actually the right ascension axis. Even though this rotates, it is away from it. This is actually the declination axis. Dyslexics of the world untie. The next massive piece to go together on this Losmandy is the counterweight. And of course, without a cradle and a telescope on it, the counterweight is massively sinking in the direction of Earth's gravity well. And we add the cradle, and we are at this point ready to receive the telescope itself. Those of you who have followed this astro thread know that I actually have a 6-inch Skywatcher refractor for mounting in to the Losmandy mount, but I personally was intrigued by the possibility of mounting the 4-inch on the mount for those occasions where I'm not willing to leave the 6-inch overnight and just bring out the 4-inch refractor. Looks like I found a solution. I would not recommend metal on metal, and nor do I plan to do metal on metal, nor do I want the metal biting up against the edge of the felt inside the capture ring here. But if this braces that I cannibalized from a previous effort with the observatory can be ensconced in soft material, they would do a perfectly good, adequate job of capturing the 4-inch refractor in the 6-inch cradle. Might have a bit of overkill here, but I wrapped the OTA in an old pillowcase with an aperture on both ends. I also ensconced the braces that I showed you earlier that were made of metal with duct tape. And then I compressed both of these pinions down to the same basic width so the telescope remains basically normal with the cradle itself. So at this point I would say it's looking very promising with regards to using the 4-inch telescope with adaptation on the Losmandy mount, whose cradle is actually set up for the 6-inch Skywatcher. You probably know an OTA and a mount does not a reusable telescope make. So it's time for another set of accessories. And somehow I managed to pack all of them, I believe, into this one little handy sack. Let's see what comes out first. Aha! Finder scope. 50mm 9x finder scope. A 2-inch star diagonal. One of 2 eyepieces, one of which is about 30mm and the other is about 8, giving 40, I believe about 40x, and on the 6-inch, 40x and 150x each, a bit less on the shorter focal length 4-inch f10. So let's put those on there and then we can see if we can get the counterweights at the proper position. Optical tube assembly, dew shield, stray light shield. It's now mounted in the Losmandy mount, the f10 4-inch Vixen achromatic refractor with 9 by 50 finder scope illuminated reticles and a 62-degree field. Let's see what the focal length is on this. Come on, baby. Tell me what you are. Okay, I think it's about a 32 millimeter focal length eyepiece, which gives us, with a 1000 focal length on the optical tube assembly, a roughly 30x. Now notice the motion. I've already discovered, much to my thanks, that I can leave the two counterweights on the axis against the optical tube assembly if it has the 4-inch on it set up with a 2-inch eyepiece, and there's room to spare. The next thing you're concerned about is whether or not it can float around the declination axis, which it appears to be able to do, although I haven't loosened it that much. But I'll play with that later on. So now what we have is a fully assembled manual telescope with equatorial mount. And my next thing, cross my fingers, is to make sure that with all these accessories on it, especially the 2-inch diagonal, that this telescope will come to focus on that mountainside, Canyon Mountain, John Day Valley. Okay, here we go. Have a look for yourself. Ta-da! Not perfect focus for this camera, but it shows you with another 3/4 of an inch of inward travel and plenty of outward travel that this scope will come to focus fully outfitted with 2-inch accessories to its OTA. Now notice also the telescope in this particular observatory has to be able to rotate out of foulage with the roof, and with the 4-inch and Glasmandy mount, this is perfectly achievable. So I'll be able to close up the observatory at night, crossing my fingers that the 6-inch with a 48-inch focal length, not 40, will also be able to accommodate. And a lot of that will depend on getting the OTA perfectly balanced in the cradle. And the final stage of setting things up is to determine whether or not the 4-inch telescope will come to focus. Probably going to remove that rag, by the way. On the distant hillside, it would not achieve it with the diagonal involved. There was no inward travel after a certain point, so I couldn't achieve focus. However, removing the star diagonal and reverting to an 1.25" adapter for the revolution imager, I was able to get this view. What do you think of that? Okay, until tonight, if the sky holds, I am going to cover up the observatory so nothing crashes.
Global warming ain't meant to be.
There's the south try. Shift it up. Latch it against the stay. Here's the east try. Once again. Stay.
We could all be doing what we can.
Enable the latches.
Do something
Nice and tight.
like lead humanity to outer space.
I'm going to allow the revolution to charge up.
Alright,
See what things look like inside.
alright. Global warming ain't
That'd be it. Just going to have to wait for a future video if you want to see what the images look like.